She looked me in the eyes, the same eyes that once told me I was her forever, and said the words that sliced at me like a knife. I'm sorry, but I still love him. Her ex, the guy who had broken her heart, humiliated her, left her shattered. She chose him over me. And in that moment, I felt the ground collapse beneath my feet. But what she didn't know was that she had just walked straight into the trap I was already setting for her. If you've ever been underestimated, betrayed, or tossed aside like you didn't matter, this story is for you. Hit that subscribe button, give this video a like, and share your own most satisfying revenge moment in the comments. Because today, you'll see what happens when betrayal meets a carefully crafted trap. Let's get into it. I used to believe in loyalty. I used to think love was something unshakable, a bond that could withstand any storm. And when I met her, I thought I'd finally found that kind of love. She wasn't perfect. None of us are. But she made me laugh. She made me feel wanted. And for the first time in years, I felt like I had someone who truly saw me. We built something together. Memories, routines, future plans. I pictured the ring, the house, maybe even kids one day. But the one shadow over our relationship, her ex, he was like a ghost that never left. His name would pop up in conversations, sometimes casually, sometimes with this bittersweet edge in her voice. She told me she was over him, that he was toxic, that he treated her like garbage and she'd never go back. I wanted to believe her. God, I wanted to. But deep down, there was always this gnawing feeling that she wasn't telling me the full truth. It started small. Messages on her phone. She'd hide when I walked into the room. Nights when she was staying late with friends, but came home distant, her smile not reaching her eyes. And every time I asked, I get the same answer. Stop being paranoid. You don't trust me? After everything I've told you about him? I backed down. I'd tell myself I was imagining it, because admitting the truth that she might still be tangled up with him would have shattered me. But lies have a way of unraveling, and soon I couldn't ignore it anymore. One night, we were sitting on the couch, and she just broke, tears in her eyes, trembling hands. She whispered, I need to tell you something. My heart sank. I already knew. She admitted it. She'd been talking to him again, meeting him. And then, the killing blow, I still love him. I'm sorry, but I can't help how I feel. I couldn't breathe. My chest was on fire, my stomach hollow. All I could think was, after everything I've given you, after all the nights I held you while you cried about him, you're choosing him over me? I didn't yell. I didn't throw things. I just sat there, silent, while she cried and tried to justify herself. And in that silence, something shifted inside me. The pain began to harden into something else, something sharper. For days after, I walked around in a fog. Work, home, repeat. Friends asked if I was okay, and I'd force a smile. But inside, my thoughts were like wildfire. Images of them together burned in my mind. The way she must have looked at him. The way she used to look at me. The laughter, the intimacy, the whispers she once shared with me. Now his... I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. Every muscle in my body was tense. My jaw sore from clenching it. I wanted to scream, to smash something, to make her feel even a fraction of the devastation she'd left me in. But then another thought came. Why should I destroy myself when I could destroy her instead? That's when the idea of revenge started to take root. I realized something important. She thought she had the power. She thought she could toss me aside like a spare part, run back to her ex, and I'd just fade into the background, broken and forgotten. But she underestimated me. She didn't know that I had already seen the patterns. She didn't know I had already anticipated her moves. And most of all, she didn't know that I was patient. I started watching, observing, taking note of her behavior, her habits, the way she lied. Every text, every late-night excuse, every detail became a piece of the puzzle I was putting together. Because if she was going to play me for a fool, I was going to make sure she paid for it. Not in anger, not in chaos, but in a way that would make her realize exactly what she lost and why she regret choosing him. The final straw came a week later. She had promised we'd spend the weekend together to talk things through. I allowed myself a tiny shred of hope. Maybe she'd come to her senses. Maybe she'd realize I was the one who stood by her, not him. But instead, she canceled last minute, said she wasn't feeling well. Except when my friend spotted her. Out! With him. Smiling. Holding his hand. Looking happier than she'd looked with me in months. When I got the message with the photo, it felt like my heart had stopped. But right after that came clarity. This was it. No more begging. No more hoping. No more waiting for her to wake up. She had chosen. And now it was my turn. I wasn't going to just walk away. No, that would have been too easy for her. I was going to let her step right into the snare I had been setting all along. Something happens when you've been broken in the worst way possible. There's that first wave of devastation. The crying, the begging your mind does for answers. But then it burns away. And what's left is something colder, sharper. I stopped asking myself why. I stopped wondering what she saw in him that she didn't see in me. Instead, I started asking, how do I make her feel this? How do I give her a front row seat to the pain she put me through? She thought she'd won. She thought running back to her ex meant she had the upper hand, that I'd just fade out of her story like a supporting character she no longer needed. But I wasn't going anywhere. I wasn't going to scream or beg. No, I was going to let her dig her own grave. When we saw each other after that confession, I didn't act angry. I didn't accuse her. I didn't show her the photos my friend sent me. Instead, I played calm, gentle, understanding. I get it, I told her. If your heart still belongs to him, I won't stand in the way. I just want you to be happy. Her eyes softened when I said that, and for a moment, she almost looked guilty. Almost. But guilt fades quickly when someone thinks they've gotten away with betrayal. She smiled. She hugged me. And I knew right then, I had her exactly where I wanted her. Because here's the thing about cheaters. Once they think you've forgiven them or moved on, their guard drops. They stop hiding as carefully. They get comfortable. And when they're comfortable, they make mistakes. I started small. Whenever we talked, I let her talk about him. Every detail she gave me, his job, where he lived, the way he changed, and treat her better now. I stored away. I watched her social media like a hawk. Every post, every little breadcrumb. The captions meant to look casual but dripping with subtext. She thought she was flaunting her new happy ending. But really, she was handing me ammunition. At the same time, I made sure she still thought I was in her corner. I'd check in, send her a text now and then, ask how she was holding up. She probably thought I was still clinging to the hope she'd come back, that I was too nice to cut her off completely. But behind that mask, I was building something, piece by piece, brick by brick. The funny part? She actually started confiding in me. Can you imagine that? The woman who tossed me aside like garbage was now calling me late at night, venting about the very man she chose over me. He's so jealous sometimes. He doesn't like when I go out without him. I don't know if I made the right choice. Oh, the irony. She left me for him, and already cracks were forming. But instead of reminding her what she'd done, I just listened, patient, supportive, because I knew something she didn't. The best revenge isn't served with anger. It's served with silence and timing. I started to gently plant doubts. Nothing too obvious, just little comments, dropped here and there. You sound stressed. That doesn't sound like a healthy relationship. Funny, you told me he used to do that before too, right? Maybe he hasn't changed as much as you think. Every time she vented, I gave her back just enough fuel to let the fire of doubt grow inside her. I wasn't pushing her away from him. I was letting her own mind do it for me. And then I set the bait. One evening, after another one of her rants about how he'd been distant lately, I sighed into phone and said, maybe we should talk in person, just to clear the air. She hesitated, then agreed. I could almost hear the gears turning in her head. Maybe she wanted closure. Maybe she wanted comfort. Or maybe, just maybe, she was already wondering if she'd made a mistake leaving me. And that's exactly what I wanted. Because the trap was simple. All I had to do was let her show her true self. Let her expose the same betrayal she'd pulled on me, this time with her ex watching. When she showed up, she looked nervous. Dressed nice, but not too nice. The kind of outfit you wear when you don't want to admit you're trying. We talked. We laughed. She apologized again, told me she never meant to hurt me. And then, slowly but surely, the conversation shifted. I don't know if I made the right choice, she said quietly. I thought he was what I wanted. But I raised an eyebrow. But what? She looked at me, really looked at me, and whispered, I miss us. And in that moment, I almost laughed. Not because I wanted her back, but because everything was falling perfectly into place. I leaned in just enough to make her believe me. I let her hold my hand, let her cry on my shoulder, let her whisper about how unhappy she really was. But what she didn't know was that I had already made sure her boyfriend would find out. See, I left a little trail, a message left open, a subtle hint in the right place. Enough for him to grow suspicious, to come looking, to be exactly where I needed him to be. So as she leaned closer, as she let her guard down completely, as she began to betray the very man she chose over me, I was ready, because this wasn't about taking her back. This wasn't about proving my worth. This was about letting her own actions expose who she really was. And just as her lips brushed mine, the sound of a door opening filled the air. Her body stiffened. Her head whipped around. And there he was, her ex, her great love, the man she had chosen over me, standing in the doorway, eyes wide, jaw clenched, betrayal written all over his face. She froze. She stammered. She tried to explain. But there was no explanation, no excuse, because he'd seen it with his own eyes. And me? I just sat back, calm, watching the panic spread across her face. She had walked straight into the trap. The silence in that room was suffocating. Her ex, the so-called love of her life, stood frozen, his fists clenched at his sides. His face was a storm of betrayal, disbelief, and barely contained fury. She scrambled to her feet, her voice trembling. Wait, it's not what it looks like. But he cut her off, his voice booming. Not what it looks like. I just saw you about to kiss him. Her words collapsed into stammers. Excuses. Lies. But the truth was already out in the open, hanging in the air like a noose tightening around her neck. I stayed seated, calm as ever, just watching the show unfold. My heart wasn't racing. My hands weren't shaking. Instead, I felt this icy clarity, this strange calm. After everything she'd put me through, this was the moment I'd been waiting for. She turned to me then, eyes wide, desperate. Tell him nothing happened. I looked at her for a long, silent moment. And then I smiled. Why would I lie? I said evenly. Her face went pale. In that instant, she realized it. She realized I wasn't here to save her, or to take her back, or play the part of the man still hopelessly in love with her. I was here to let her choke on her own choices. Her ex's voice was raw, sharp. You said you were done with him. You swore you loved me. And now I walk and see this. She tried to reach for him, but he yanked his arm away. The betrayal in his eyes was unmistakable. He wasn't just angry, he was broken, and I knew that feeling too well. The difference? I'd had weeks to process it. He was feeling it fresh, right there in the moment, and she was the one delivering the blow. It was poetic, perfect. For the first time since this nightmare began, I wasn't the victim. She had chosen him over me. She had flaunted their love in my face, lied to me, used me as her emotional crutch when things with him got rocky. She thought she could juggle us both, thought she could have the stability of my support and the thrill of being with him. And now she had neither, because in one moment she lost him. And as for me, I was already gone. Her words turned frantic, her voice high-pitched with panic. It didn't mean anything. I was confused. I didn't know what I wanted. But he wasn't listening. He paced the room, running his hands through his hair, muttering to himself. The weight of betrayal was crashing down on him. The way it once crashed down on me. And me? I sat there in silence, almost attached, as if I was an audience member watching the final act of a tragic play. Except this time, I wasn't the one on stage. She was. I thought I'd feel explosive joy, that I'd laugh or shout or gloat, but instead it was something subtler, deeper, relief, vindication, satisfaction. It wasn't about humiliating her in front of him. It wasn't even about getting her back. It was about balance, about knowing that the pain she caused me had circled back to her, that the same knife she used to cut me down had finally turned in her hands. She turned back to me, tears streaking down her face. Please, tell him it wasn't what it looked like. Please, just say something. I looked her dead in the eyes. My voice was low, steady. You chose him over me. That was your decision. And now you're living with it. Her lips trembled. She shook her head, as if refusing to believe that the safety net she thought she had in me was gone. But it was. Completely. Finally, her ex stopped pacing. He looked at her with eyes that were no longer angry, but empty. Hollow, I can't do this, he said flatly. I can't trust you. Not after this. And just like that, he turned and walked out. The sound of the door slamming was like thunder, final and absolute. She stood there, frozen, as the realization sank in. She had lost him. She had lost me. In trying to have it all, she ended up with nothing. The silence that followed was thick, almost unbearable. She sank to the couch, buried her face in her hands, and sobbed. I stood up, slowly, deliberately. My footsteps echoed as I walked toward the door. And just before I left, I turned back to her one last time. You built this trap yourself, I said quietly. I just let you fall into it. And then I walked away. Stepping out into the night air, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Freedom, the weight on my chest, the constant ache in my stomach, the fog that had clouded my mind. It all lifted, because finally justice had been served. Not by me dragging her down, but by letting her destroy herself. It wasn't just revenge. It was closure. Looking back now, I realized something important. Revenge doesn't always have to be loud. It doesn't always have to be destructive. Sometimes, the sweetest revenge is silence, patience, letting the person who wronged you trip over their own lies and fall flat on their face. She thought she could play with my heart and walk away untouched. But in the end, she ended up alone, drowning in the mess she created. And me, I walked away stronger, wiser, free. The days after that night were eerily quiet. For the first time in months, my phone didn't buzz with her texts about needing space or feeling torn. There were no late-night calls where she pretended to check in, but really wanted to compare me against him. Silence. And that silence was beautiful. But of course, it didn't last. 3 days later, my phone lit up with her name. I let it ring. Then it rang again, and again, until finally, a message popped up. Please, can we talk? I messed up. I didn't mean for things to end this way. I stared at the screen for a long time, almost amused. She wasn't reaching out because she loved me. She was reaching out because she had nothing left. And that was the point. She had chosen her ex over me. And in doing so, she gambled everything. She bet on him and lost. Now, when the game was over and the pieces had fallen, she wanted to pick her back up. Not this time. I left the message on read. Over the next week, her attempts grew desperate. Day 1, I just need closure. Can we meet for coffee? Day 3, I know I hurt you, but I swear I'm still in love with you. Day 5, he left me. I need you. Please don't do this to me. Day 7, a full-blown voicemail, sobbing, apologizing, begging. Each word was a reminder, not of what I lost, but of what I escaped. I'll be honest. Part of me wanted to answer, not because I wanted her back, but because I wanted to hear her admit the truth, to confess that choosing him over me was the biggest mistake of her life. But another part of me, the stronger part, knew that the most powerful answer was silence. By not engaging, I wasn't giving her closure. I wasn't giving her comfort. I wasn't giving her a chance to shift the blame or soften the consequences of her choices. And that silence, That was the sharpest knife of all. Word started to spread. Mutual friends, who once whispered about how cute she and her ex looked together, now whispered about how fast it all imploded. They told me how he refused to see her, how she tried to show up at his place, and he shut the door in her face. They told me how she started crying at parties, talking about how no one understood her, how she just wanted love. But the truth? People did understand. They just didn't sympathize anymore. Because everyone could see it now. Her selfishness, her indecision, her lies. She hadn't just lost him. She hadn't just lost me. She was losing her reputation. One night, another message came through. This time different in tone. I know you think I deserve this. Maybe I do, but I can't eat. I can't sleep. I feel like I'm falling apart. If you ever cared about me, please don't just leave me like this. For a second, I felt a twinge of pity. Because I remember being in that place once when I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, couldn't think straight because of her. But then it hit me. She wasn't sorry for what she did. She was sorry for the consequences. She didn't regret betraying me. She regretted being caught. And once again, I said nothing. While she spiraled, I started to heal. I picked up old hobbies I had abandoned. I reconnected with friends I had neglected while I was wrapped up in her drama. I even started running in the mornings, letting the cool air clear my head and remind me of my own strength. Each day, I felt a little lighter. Each day, I felt a little freer. And every ignored text, every unanswered call, was another brick laid in the wall between me and the chaos she represented. It all came to a head about a month later. Late at night, I got one final message. I know you hate me. I know I don't deserve forgiveness. But please, can you just tell me why you won't give me another chance? I sat there, staring at the screen, and for the first time, I typed out a response. But it wasn't long. It wasn't emotional. It was just 6 words. Because you already made your choice. And then I blocked her. The moment I hit block, something inside me shifted. It wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about liberation. About refusing to let someone who broke me once have the power to break me again. She chose her ex over me. She gambled with my heart. And when it all blew up in her face, I didn't need to lift a finger. Because in the end, the greatest revenge wasn't destroying her. It was letting her destroy herself and walking away untouched. People often think revenge has to be loud, explosive, dramatic. But the truth? Sometimes the most devastating revenge is silence. It's the absence of attention, the refusal to engage, the simple, unshakable act of moving on. She thought she'd always have me waiting in the wings, ready to catch her when things fell apart. But when she turned back, I wasn't there anymore. And that emptiness, that's what haunts her. After I blocked her, the noise finally stopped. No more desperate calls. No more manipulative texts. No more guilt-tripping voicemails. Just silence. And for the first time in what felt like forever, I could breathe without checking my phone every 5 minutes. I could laugh without wondering if she'd see me and twist it into a guilt trip. I could live. It was like waking up from a nightmare I hadn't realized I was trapped in. But here's the funny thing about silence. It speaks louder than words. It didn't take long for mutual friends to notice a shift. When they asked her about me, she had no answers. She couldn't explain where I went or why I wasn't around anymore. All she could say was vague nonsense like, he doesn't understand, or it's complicated. But people saw through it. One friend even told me later, you know, she used to talk like she had you wrapped around her finger. Like no matter what she did, you'd always come back. But when you went ghost, man, she didn't know what to do with herself. And honestly, that was the sweetest part of it all. Because for once, I wasn't the one left holding the bag. She was. The months that followed weren't kind to her. I heard bits and pieces. How she showed up at his apartment again, trying to fix things. How he told her flat out that she was a mistake he didn't want to repeat. How she started hopping between friend groups, trying to find someone who would still listen to her drama. But the thing about burning bridges is, eventually, you run out of places to cross. And that's what was happening to her. She had run out of bridges. Meanwhile, I was doing the opposite. I focused on my work, pour myself into my goals, and started hitting milestones I never thought I'd reach so quickly. I wasn't just surviving anymore, I was thriving, and it showed. People noticed I carried myself differently, more confident, more grounded, like someone who had walked through fire and come out stronger on the other side. Because I had. Of course, life has a twisted sense of humor. About 6 months later, I ran into her. It wasn't planned. I was out with some friends at a restaurant, and she just happened to walk in. The moment our eyes met, I could see it. The recognition, the regret, the desperate flicker of hope that maybe, just maybe, she could get one more chance. She smiled weakly, almost like nothing had happened, like we were old friends bumping into each other. But I wasn't the same person she had left behind. I nodded politely, then turned my attention back to my friends. That tiny, deliberate dismissal, it hit her harder than any angry confrontation ever could, because it said, "You're not even worth my time anymore." Still, she tried. She came over, asking about work, about life, about mutual friends. Her voice carried that nervous edge, the kind people get when they're trying to fix something that's already broken beyond repair. And I gave her short, polite answers. No anger, no bitterness, just indifference. And that's when she cracked. Her smile faltered. Her voice shook. Finally, she blurted, "Do you ever think we could, start over?" The table went quiet. My friends exchanged looks. And for a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. But then I remembered every sleepless night, every unanswered question, every moment she made me feel like I wasn't enough. And I knew my answer. I looked her straight in the eye and said calmly, "You already had that chance, and you chose someone else." She froze. I could see the words sink in, see the way her eyes glossed over as the weight of reality hit. This wasn't a fight she could win with tears or apologies. This wasn't a situation she could spin in her favor. This was a final. And with that, I turned back to my friends and continued my evening as if she wasn't even there. That moment wasn't just revenge. It was closure. Because revenge isn't always about payback. Sometimes it's about showing with absolute clarity that the person who hurt you has no power left over you. She had tried to pull me into her chaos again, but I refused. And in doing so, I showed her the one truth she could never escape. She had chosen her ex over me. And by doing so, she had lost me forever. After that night, she didn't try again. No more calls. No more texts. No more awkward run-ins where she tried to spark conversation. It was like she finally understood what I had known all along. When you betray someone's trust, you don't just lose their love. You lose their respect. You lose their presence. You lose them. And once they're gone for good. Looking back, I realized something important. Sometimes the best revenge isn't plotting or scheming, or even confronting the person who wronged you. Sometimes the best revenge is living so well, so fully, that their betrayal doesn't even register in your world anymore. They expect drama. They expect tears. They expect anger. But silence, indifference, success without them, that's what breaks them. Because deep down, the harshest punishment isn't losing someone's love. It's realizing they never needed you in the first place. After that night at the restaurant, word spread quickly in our social circles. It wasn't that I went around telling anyone what happened. Far from it. But people notice things. They notice when someone who once carried themselves with arrogance suddenly looks small. And that's what happened to her. Her reputation started to crumble. Not because of anything I did, but because of what she did to herself. Friends grew tired of her constant drama. She burned too many bridges, played too many games, and eventually, no one wanted to be the shoulder she cried on anymore. Her ex? He was long gone, already with someone else. Someone who wasn't her. And without him, without me, without the attention she thrived on, she was left with nothing but her own reflection. Meanwhile, my life kept expanding. I got promoted at work, traveled to places I had always dreamed of, met new people who actually valued me for who I was, not for what they could take from me. I didn't just move on. I leveled up, and the more I grew, the more her memory faded into the background. Sometimes, I'd hear her name mentioned in passing. Did you hear what happened to her? Or, she's not doing so well these days. And you know what? I didn't feel joy at her downfall. I didn't feel pity either. I felt nothing, because she wasn't part of my story anymore. But just when I thought she was gone for good, she tried one last time. Almost a year later, I got a message. Not on my phone. She had been blocked there. Not even through email. No, she messaged me on LinkedIn of all places. The message was short. I've been thinking a lot. I realize I made the biggest mistake of my life. I should have chosen you. Can we talk? I stared at it for a long moment, and then I laughed. Not a bitter laugh. Not a mocking one. Just a laugh of recognition. Because here she was, nearly a year later, still trying to undo a choice she made in a moment of selfishness. Still trying to claw her way back into a life she no longer had access to. And I had no desire to reopen that door. So I deleted the message, without replying. And that was it. That was the final nail in the coffin. No screaming match. No dramatic confrontation. No chance for her to pour her heart out and beg for forgiveness. Just silence. Because sometimes the greatest revenge isn't in what you say, it's in what you refuse to say. By ignoring her, I showed her the truth more powerfully than words ever could. She had lost me, permanently, and for the first time I felt total peace. Not just relief that she was gone, not just satisfaction that she regretted it, but real, deep peace. Because I finally understood that her betrayal wasn't a reflection of my worth. It was a reflection of hers. She didn't choose her ex over me because I wasn't enough. She chose him because she was chasing something broken inside herself. And that brokenness wasn't mine to fix. If there's one thing I learned from all of this, it's this. People will betray you. People will underestimate you. People will walk away thinking the grass is greener somewhere else. And when that happens, your instinct might be to fight for them, to prove yourself, to demand they see your value. But the truth? The most powerful move you can make is to walk away and build a life so good, so fulfilling, that their absence doesn't matter. Because real revenge isn't about destroying them. It's about showing, without words, that they never destroyed you. She chose her ex over me. And in doing so, she fell into her own trap, losing the one person who would have stood by her through anything. And me? I didn't just survive. I thrived. That's the real victory. That's the real revenge. So let me ask you this. Have you ever had someone betray your trust and later regret it? What did you do? Did you take them back? Or did you let them fall into their own trap like I did? Drop your story in the comments below. I'd love to read them. And if you enjoyed this ride, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications. Because here we don't just tell stories. We serve justice one tale at a time. Until next time, remember, the best revenge is living well.